Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 3, Episode 3 of HBO's Industry, entitled It. Now, there's a scene about midway through the episode where we see Robert and Eric having to share a room at the COP, which stands for Conference of the Parties. It's a conference where stakeholders from around the world converge to discuss and work towards solutions surrounding climate change. Eric, Robert, and Yasmin have been sent to the COP in Bern, Switzerland, to essentially do damage control over the continued struggles of Lumi stock. And they're going to do this on a panel with Henry, played by Kit Harington, and Anna. While they're there, they're forced to share a room with each other, and there's a scene where they're in the same bed, and they're watching a silent movie where someone says the line, where is it? There we go. I've inspected all the lady employees, and not one of them has it in capital letters. And this is where we get our episode title from, and why I think the episode title here is referring to one Harper Stern, who proved herself in this episode, as she has throughout the entirety of the show's run, to have it. If I had to choose one word to describe Harper, it would be relentless. Like, no matter how it looks, she's going to go after what she wants. And that's why she has it, and why she finds success either completely out of nowhere or where others don't find it. I thought this was yet another really solid episode early on in this season. And given what this episode set up, I can only see this season continuing to get better as we move on. Or at least what I think it's set up. Because I don't know for sure, but I have thoughts, and we'll talk about that in the section of this video appropriately titled Thoughts. But this season has been a bit light on Harper so far, and I'd still say that the A-plot from this episode is the COP conference in Bern. I don't like saying COP conference when the C stands for conference. The COP in Bern. It's like when people say ATM machine. Anyway, this was very much Harper's episode, and I think that we were better off for it. Robert, he continues to be the most interesting character on the show for me. What this guy will do, or at least what the episode seems to imply that he'll do, in order to get a buy recommendation on Lumi stock, seemingly has no limit. Even Yasmin, who, don't get me wrong, she's still mostly just fucks, but she shows that she's finally starting to learn how to find success herself in ways other than fucking. But most importantly, man, this show is still incredibly well written. And I'm not going to get too deep into the comparisons with Succession. They're becoming more and more frequent. Hell, if you want to hear me talk about the comparisons to Succession, you can probably watch my videos from Season 2. I know I talked about it in there somewhere. But particularly this season, people seem to be scoffing at the comparison. And while, of course, the two shows are very different, and I do think Succession is still better, I won't say significantly better, but it's not particularly close either. But while I do still think the Succession is better, if we're talking about the manner in which the shows are written, I think it's an apt comparison. Industry's no Succession. Let me get that out of the way now before people accuse me of saying that, so they can then argue against the point that I didn't make. People love to do that. But both shows are written with a respect for the audience in mind. And again, if you watch my Succession videos, you already fucking know. And I talked about it in the Industry videos for last season. This show isn't going to dumb shit down, just like Succession. So if you want to truly appreciate what it's doing, you're going to need to pay the fuck attention. Just like Succession, this show benefits from a rewatch. And that's not because it's like poorly constructed, so you need to watch again to understand. It's actually quite the opposite. It's so well constructed and rigid in its refusal to dumb itself down that on subsequent watches, you'll begin to notice just how much effort is put into making sure that everything connects with this show. But then on the flip side, they don't give you too much either. Like, they give you just enough and nothing more to understand what's going on. And Succession did the same thing. I'm sure I probably said that exact same thing in some Succession videos. And man, I respect the fuck out of both shows for doing that. But that's kind of enough of my opening spiel here. It's probably been like, it's been as long. I was about to say it's probably been like 10 minutes. It's only been 5. But let's get into talking about what happened in this episode, because again, it can be confusing, especially when you're not deeply entrenched in the financial world. I'm not. I would imagine a lot of you aren't either. But that's what the extra watches gives me a better understanding of what's going on, so that I can get on here and explain it to you guys. So the episode opens with a scene that is far more pivotal to the episode's plot than it seemed on my initial watch. And yes, I've watched the episode twice. So this guy, Frank, who we come to meet during the episode, is an in-house analyst at Pierpoint. While he works for Pierpoint, his job is to give unbiased financial advice to Pierpoint's clients. But Eric says in this episode that Frank knows who butters his bread, so he wouldn't dare give a sell recommendation on Lumi when he knows that Pierpoint underwrote the Lumi IPO. But in this opening scene, as Robert points out, Frank is being pretty aggressive in his questioning of Henry for a guy who was supposed to be giving a positive buy recommendation for Lumi. And this scene features something the industry does often that I mentioned in a video earlier this season, where you have characters kind of like speaking a bunch of financial mumbo jumbo that just might as well be in German. But then another character or two explains the concept in layman's terms for the audience. And I think there's a skill in that alone, in not making that super obvious that you're explaining something in a slightly dumber way for the audience. Like they do a really good job on this show of doing that, but not doing it in a way that makes you feel like you're a dumb person having something explained to you. Like, hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there, so this is the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not gonna lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. Like in episode 1, and I talked about this in my video for it, it was how Eric and Adler reiterated the importance of the Lumi stock opening at 480. Like it was something like mumbo jumbo, mumbo jumbo, mumbo jumbo. And he was like 480, 480. We need to be at 480. Got it. It's 480. Like so like even if you didn't understand shit that came before that, you knew that when they said 430 that it was less than what Adler wanted. So you could go, oh, bad. Even though you don't know shit what's going on about what's going on, right? So in the opening scene for this episode, we hear Frank and Henry have this conversation, right? And then Robert and Yasmin explain the conversation to the audience through Robert's questions that he asks Eric, where he's like, for a guy that's supposed to be giving a buy recommendation on this stock, he's sure being competitive. So that's explaining that, Robert explaining that piece to the audience through his questions to Eric, and then Yasmin explains more to the audience through her statements to Robert. Like she says something that suggests that it's justifiable that Frank would have all these reservations about the Lumi price. And all we really needed to learn from this scene is that they needed a buy recommendation from Frank. And it's really sounding like he might not go in that direction, and that if he doesn't, it's justifiable, which is what Yasmin says, and as Lumi has continued to perform poorly even following the IPO. So like, even though a lot of that in that scene might have been like, what the fuck are they talking about? That's really all we needed to pick up on that scene, is the importance of Frank and how they need a buy recommendation on Lumi stock. So after this meeting, Eric gets a text from someone named Wilhelmina, who I'm assuming is a partner at Pierpoint, given the conversation that they have, and she says that she has an opportunity for him. He meets her for a nice game of midnight golf. What the fuck was that? And she explains that Adler is supposed to be going to the COP to do a panel with Henry and Anna, but since he's taking family time in Europe, she wants Eric to go instead. Now, this is a pretty layered conversation here in this midnight golf scene, and it's another example of why I applaud the writing on this show. We're supposed to infer, I think, quite a bit from this scene. Like, again, because we're supposed to infer it, I can't say for sure this is what it is, but I'm fairly confident that I'm every moment where I say I think we're supposed to infer this in this video, I'm pretty confident in what I'm saying, because this ain't gonna be the last time. So for starters, Adler is taking family time in Europe family time in Europe after the shitty Lumi launch and their move to ESGs. Like, it kind of sounds like we're supposed to infer that this is like a forced sabbatical. Like, the pivot to ESGs is not working out. Lumi's crashing and burning. You need to go take a paid vacation, my guy. Like, that's what I think we're supposed to infer from that conversation, or that piece of the conversation. And Eric, I think he picks up on that. I think Eric infers the same thing, and he's concerned for a few reasons. One, if the talks of Lumi being overvalued are true, and it's now crashing and burning, other ESGs like Europa Gas, who is mentioned in this conversation and is next in line for Pierpoint to do their IPO, those other ESGs could bail. Like, they could be like, oh, this Lumi shit's crashing and burning, I'm out. So that's a valid concern for Eric. Two, with Pierpoint having shifted its focus to ESGs, against the advice of many, by the way, if that doesn't pan out, then obviously that's not great for Eric's career as someone who is now very high up in the ranks at Pierpoint. And thirdly, and most importantly, I think Eric sees himself as being set up as the potential fall guy for Lumi for all of this if it potentially goes left. Like, it might not be Adler is on a forced sabbatical. It might be Adler's taking this sabbatical so that Eric can then go in, be the face of Lumi crashing, and then can then be the fall guy. Either way, I think we're supposed to infer from this scene that they want Eric to take the fall if this doesn't work out. And like I said, very little of that is expressed explicitly in that scene. It's what I think we're supposed to take away. So Eric is joined in Burn by Robert and Yasmin. Robert goes as the authority on all things Lumi. He can bring Eric up to speed on the plane, and you know why Yasmin goes because she fucks, man. That's what she does. If you need somebody to get fucked, you bring Yasmin. But all jokes aside, I did say I've seen growth in Yasmin, and she does pick up a little bit on what she's being brought out there for. She still wants to be respected desperately by Eric and by everybody at Pierpoint. And she can't understand why she's there, so she correctly assumes that it's because Henry requested her. I loved when, after Henry's scumbag friend asked her if she killed her dad, she asked Henry if she can leave. She's like, can I leave this party, like, in an official capacity? Can I bounce? And he's like, of course you can. You're not here in any sort of professional capacity. Like, that was so funny to me because I know how important it is to her to be respected. He's just like, you're not here to do finance. Like, the fuck? It was almost like unintentionally meta to me. Like, hold on, you're only here on this show to fuck. Like, not to play a cunning banker like everyone else. Like, that's not your role here. Like, I don't know, that you're not here in any sort of professional capacity, that shit took me the fuck out. She's like, yes, I am. Anyway, they get on this private plane to go to Burn, and Henry tells everyone but Yasmin to sit in the back of the plane, and since they don't have a Rosa Parks among them, everyone goes to the back, and Yasmin is forced to contend with that the aforementioned slimeball friend of Henry. And once in Burn, Eric and Robert try to get some information out of Frank when they see him, and they can't, so Robert ends up finding Frank in the sauna. And again, I think we're left to infer a lot from this scene. There's a lot to infer from this one. For starters, that's dick number 3. I said we're keeping dick count again like we did on Euphoria. So let's just get that out of the way. Apparently there were 2 in episode 1. I must have missed one. Somebody said in the comments there was 2. I must have missed one looking down at my notes or something. So there were 2 in episode 1. This one now makes 3. More importantly, though, I think we're to infer that Robert fucked Frank for a favorable recommendation and ultimately didn't get it. So in this scene, Frank mentions that Robert has been brought up in a WhatsApp chat about the hottest straight guys at Pierpoint. Then he mentions how much he likes compliance. And of course, most importantly, he's stroking himself during this conversation too. That's a pretty relevant piece of information. Then later, when Robert and Eric run into each other at breakfast, Eric asks Robert where he slept the previous night. And Robert technically doesn't even answer the question. He just says, like, the room was, I heard it was noisy on the inside, so I just left you to it. Like, he doesn't actually say anything. Finally, Robert asks Frank why he published the hold review during the panel. I'm sorry, the hold recommendation during the panel, and he mentions that Frank should buy him a drink. And maybe I'm reading too much into that, but all of that read to me like Frank implied he'd do a favorable recommendation if Robert complied with his unspoken but physically obvious request. And then Robert asking Frank why he still published a hold recommendation and then not answering where he slept the previous night seems to confirm to me that he complied with Frank's request. And again, that's why I said this show only gives you what you need and nothing more to understand what's going on. You have to be an active viewer who reads between the lines. And I love that about this show and Succession. I also liked Frank's line when Robert asked him how he works for Pierpoint but made a recommendation that's not in Pierpoint's best interest. And Frank said something to the effect of like, even though I work for an institution, I'm not institutionalized. I was like, all right on, brother. I hear that. And now I think this is a good point to transition into talking about Harper, since the publication of Frank's recommendation leads to Harper turning the entire show on its head. So I said in one of the previous 2 videos for this season that the show might be setting up Petra and Harper to strike out on their own. And I definitely didn't think it would happen this fast, but here we are. And it all starts with Petra's lawyer telling her that Anna wants to renew their contract, Petra's contract for an additional 5 years and a lot of money. I was like, all right, well, shit, that seems kind of odd given the nature of their last interaction, where Anna's like unplugging shit out of the wall. Talk about your fucking godmother to Bodicea. But and shout out to whoever told me in the comments that Bodicea was like a legendary British warrior or some shit like that. Still, just a wild name to throw out there. But I'm glad that somebody put me up on game on that in the comments. But like I said, given their last interaction, the 5-year re-up on the contract seemed a little odd. But then we learned the catch is that if Petra does anything unsavory or leaves or whatever, Anna gets 20% of her profits for the next 5 years, the terms of what that contract would be. Additionally, she's added what's called a philosophy clause meant to uphold the green philosophies of Future Dawn by forcing Petra to need Anna's authorization before making any moves. In addition to this being a shitty thing to do, fucking cut! Petra has been making the point all season that it's her moves that keep the company afloat while Future Dawn loses money on Anna's like woke ass investments and shit. This pushes Petra to strike out on her own, and she asks Harper to join. If I had to make one complaint about this episode, it would be that I don't think the show has done a good enough job to this point to make me believe that Harper has done a good enough job to this point to earn that level of trust from Petra. Like that was a little bit like episode 3 story, like, hey, you want to start our own thing together? Like they had like 2 conversations. But on the flip side of that, Petra seems hesitant herself, like mentioning several times, like in this episode, like how young Harper is. So like there's some reluctancy there on her part too. It's not a fully like, hey, I'm in on Harper, let's do this together. There is some hesitancy there. So that's why I say if I had to make one complaint, it's such a small one. And like I said, there's even a little bit there to support it. But they need to have around $300 million to be taken seriously. So Petra wants her and Harper to go to the COP and to try to steal the companies that Anna plans on poaching from underneath Anna by meeting with those folks in the morning when Anna has them all scheduled for after lunch. Kind of like, all right, well, while she's sleeping, we gonna be out here grinding. Now, as Petra points out, COP is a climate conference and these are ESG, so Harper is rightfully concerned, like, why would they do business with us? But Petra is confident that, just like her, financial returns are gonna trump these companies' morals. Now, remember how I said at the top that the best word to describe Harper is relentless? Think about how, even just as Anna's assistant, she had no problems confidently walking up to Petra and selling herself and pitching ideas. And she pushes Petra towards striking out on her own to start the episode, and then once they arrive at the COP, she immediately seeks out Otto Moston to present herself as a new private trader and to pitch him on non-ESGs. Later, after the meetings with Anna's potential clients go poorly for them because they can't get proof of Petra's successful track record without alerting Anna. That's the whole thing about, like, can you get a picture of her? Basically, they want to prove that Petra makes smart financial decisions and be like, here's the things that she chose to invest in and how it's worked out. They want to be able to show that to these people, but they can't because if they try to look that up, it can alert Anna to what they're doing. So Harper recruits Yasmin to get this information for them since Petra is now getting cold feet. And Yasmin is going to use Sweet Pea, the new character that we met earlier this season, to kind of get that information as well. So this is when Yasmin shows that she's learning something. I said earlier, like, she still just fucks, but well, not just fucks, she fucks, but she's doing other stuff too. She shows that she's learned something by essentially saying that if I get you this information, Harper, and it works out for you, I want you to hire me and Pierpoint, and I want the commission for your company. She's like, take me on as a client. And Harper's like, I'm sorry, not take me on as a client. Make us your investment bank. She wants the commission. To which Harper's like, say less. Like, we got it. So Harper goes to Eric's panel, Eric, Anna, and Henry's panel. And this is when the whole recommendation is posted by Frank, and Harper strikes yet again. In front of everyone, including Anna, she lays out her and Petra's plan, names and everything, to strike out from Anna and Future Dawn, and does serious damage to Pierpoint by revealing Frank's hold recommendation in front of everybody as well. Basically saying, like, your push to ESGs is ruining you. She technically doesn't even ask a question. She raised her hand at the panel, and she just does that. She stands up, she owns their souls, and she sits back down. But Petra's understandably pissed after it, though. Like, yeah, that was a cool moment and shit. I'm glad you did that, but it did nothing to help us. And it seems to have only harmed us. And she's about to bail on Harper after calling her a kid again, when Otto Mostyn and this other guy named Peter, who we met earlier in the episode, told Harper to come up with a name for their hedge fund, which ultimately ends up being Leviathan. They arrive at their door, having been sold on Harper and Petra based on two things. One, Harper's question at the panel showed an alignment with them in how she views this whole ESG situation, how she views finance in general. They liked hearing that. They were like, okay, this is what we believe. Here's someone else saying my thoughts out loud. So that was one way that she won them over. And the other, Otto made a call to Jesse Bloom, who we learned is in prison. And Jesse gave Harper essentially what, I don't know if it was meant to be a ringing endorsement, but it's what it ended up being for Otto. Basically telling Otto how savage and cutthroat Harper is. So couple this with Yasmin having come through on getting Petra's track record, and Otto and Peter are in to the tune of $200 million. And then Harper keeps up her end of the bargain, especially since it serves her personal vendetta as well. Her and Petra hire Pierpoint as their investment bank, and Harper demands complete and total servitude from Eric. Look me in my motherfucking face when I tell you, you gonna answer the phone every time I call. Look at me, motherfucker. Like, she really lays it on thick. Not even trying to hide the, like, astronomical levels of gloating that she's doing here. It's a great scene. It's a brilliant move by Harper, as she completely emasculates Eric in this scene. But what's also cool is we know Harper is Harper, and she fucks up a lot. And she's cocky now, but I bet that pendulum is going to swing back in Eric's direction before this season is out. But here's the thing, and I think this is why Eric eats shit in this scene. He needs this. Remember what I said earlier? I said he thinks this, I think this. He knows he's being set up to be the fall guy for this ESG shit, for this Lumi shit. So this could cover his ass. He has to sit there and he has to take this shit. But I know he's not going to ultimately let it ride. But now, if they try to say, you fucked up the Lumi thing, you got to get up out of here. He's like, but now I'm taking $200 million in business with just Harper and Petra. And then Petra says, or Harper says, Otto signing up has opened up other investors to potentially rock with us as well. So this could end up being a massive account. So they could be like, well, can't fire Eric. And again, last time I'm going to say this in this video, they don't explicitly tell you that. You just have to know the characters, understand the situation, and pick up on what they give you. So lastly, before I close with a couple of thoughts, I want to talk about Henry, Yasmin, and Lumi. We learned that Henry's father killed himself and that Henry has had suicidal thoughts as well. We've already seen how emotionally volatile he is. I'm really curious where this is going. They're giving this guy a pretty rich history of mental illness. It can't just be on some, it'd be cool if he was like this. Like, it can't be that simple, right? I bet they have something planned for him that revolves around this. I'm just curious. I'm curious to what it is. After he invites Yasmin to the closed hotel pool and still doesn't get laid, he does what everyone suggested that he was always going to do. Because everyone has said this to him, like, yeah, we know you going to sell your stock, right? And that's what he does. He sells his own personal shares in Lumi. And this basically, to me, this felt like the end of the Lumi ESG plotline. Like, So the whole recommendation comes out. Well, for starters, it started off poorly. You had the whole situation with the power going out. The price was already lower than they wanted at launch. The whole recommendation comes out. The price continues to plummet. I think Henry says it fell under 15 or 20% or some shit in this episode. Henry then sells his own shares. Harper and Petra now have their own hedge funds supported by anti-ESG investors. Like, it kind of feels like the Lumi plotline isn't the focus for the season at all. Not to say that they ever said it was, but it seems like it was a way to get us to this point that we're at right now without it having felt rushed. And that works. It works. Like, if this is we'll say an 8-episode season, I'm cool with like the first 3 episodes being a very high quality setup for the final 5. Like, that's perfectly fine with that. But it seems like this season is actually going to be about Pierpoint working for Harper and how that impacts Eric, how Henry manages his relationship with Yasmin while the thing with her father plays out. And then there's various other subplots that they're in, I think still in the process of setting up, one of which I'm going to talk about in the thoughts. So on that note, let's get to the aforementioned thoughts. The first thought that I had is the subplot that I was alluding to just now was about Rishi. Rishi's been conspicuously absent this season. We got, a couple of good scenes of him giving Eric shit over firing Kenny, and that was pretty much it. The back scratching, and that's it. But I think we can all agree that Rishi's one of the most entertaining characters on the show, so where the fuck has he been, right? If you watch the preview for next week's episode, it seems like it's going to be a singularly focused on Rishi episode. Like, the whole thing was Rishi, the whole preview. I don't think you could technically call it a bottle episode, because I feel like a bottle episode has to have one location as well. But it does seem like this isn't going to be like we're going to hit all these different stories and all these different things. It seems like this is going to be all Rishi for this episode. So I'm assuming we're going to learn what's going on with his back itch, all that good stuff. But if they're dedicating an entire episode to just Rishi, not only is that alone interesting to me, but I would also assume they'll tie in whatever he's dealing with the main story. So, like, I don't know why, but I watched that preview and I'm really excited for episode 4. My next thought, does Eric still have it? Like, he underestimated the likelihood that Frank would do anything other than give a buy recommendation on Lumi. He was wrong. And he seems to be getting disrespected at every turn. Like, he's being set up to take the fall for the ESGs. He's got multiple women calling him old. He's desperately trying to, like, fuck himself young. Like, it seems like he's losing it more and more. There's the whole situation with his divorce, the drinking. They alluded to that here. He started to order a scotch on the plane, and they looked at him. He's like, yeah, never mind. Like, the drinking, the shit with Kenny, like, he seems to be falling apart, right? So I'm wondering what they're going to do with that as well. I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't have any idea right now, but it does seem like they're setting up this idea, like, does Eric still have it? I think the show wants to believe that he does, but I feel like Eric always gets the last laugh. So, like, even if he is losing it, if he doesn't have it anymore, I don't know. I feel like, again, like I said earlier, I feel like the pendulum always swings back in Eric's way, in Eric's direction. Lastly, in addition to Jesse Bloom, a couple other folks are name dropped here. The first is Gus. We get an update on Gus. I asked in my first video if he was going to be in this season because he wasn't in the trailer for season 3. Still remains to be seen, but Robert does give an update on him. Apparently, Gus works for a VC, which is a venture capital, and it's in Palo Alto, which is in California. A venture capitalist is an investor who provides capital to companies with high growth potential in exchange for an equity stake, aka sounds like what Otto is doing with Harper and Petra. So interesting. The other name drop is Celeste. Who is Celeste? That's the woman. That's the woman that Yasmin worked for most of last season, who specialized in like one-on-one personal wealth management for like the really uber rich people. You remember she had that meeting with Yasmin's dad where he came in with the biker shorts and shit? Well, unless it's a strange coincidence, that's the woman that Henry calls to sell his shares in Lumi at the end of the episode. So, again, for the last time, for real, the writers don't take any days off with this show. Everything's coming back around. I heard that. I was like, Celeste from last season, and it tracks. Henry will be a person that she would work with. So anyway, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments, and until next week, peace.